When you look at the faces of saints on ancient icons, do you notice their fingers? Almost always 2, 3, or even all 5 fingers on the right hand are arranged in a strange, unnatural form. The index finger is often pointed upwards, 2 other fingers are joined in a circle, and the pinky is sticking out. This is not just a blessing gesture. It's a language, sacred, ancient, and encrypted. Why does this gesture repeat on thousands of icons painted in different centuries and regions? Why is it always the same, as if the artist is following some strict code? In religious tradition, this is called iconic canonicity. But if we dig deeper, we'll discover that these gestures not only convey theological ideas, they are much older than Christianity. Many of these forms resemble mudras, symbolic hand gestures from Hindu and Buddhist traditions, used for controlling inner energy, meditation, and even allegedly communicating with the divine. For example, the popular Christian gesture with 2 fingers raised, index and middle, and 3 joined is identical to the Eastern mudra Vitaraka, symbolizing the transmission of teachings. Is it a coincidence? Another example, the gesture where the pinky and index fingers are raised, while the middle and ring fingers are pressed against the palm. This same gesture was made by priests in ancient Egypt during rituals. Later, this symbol became associated with Satanism in the modern world. Why can one and the same sign be sacred in one context and demonic in another? Iconography is not just religious art. It's a form of transmitting knowledge, a code that slips past the ordinary eye. Not everyone could read in the past, but reading icons was something they could do. The gestures became a language that transmitted sacred knowledge to the chosen ones. And perhaps this is why ordinary believers were never told what these hand forms, poses, and finger movements meant, because the truth was too dangerous. If you closely examine the icons depicting Christ, you will almost always see his right hand in a recognizable gesture. 2 fingers, the index and middle, are raised, the ring and pinky fingers are bent, and the thumb touches the ring finger. In church tradition, the explanation is simple. This gesture symbolizes the combination of the divine and human natures of Jesus, as well as the initials of the name Jesus Christ, ICXC. But why did this particular gesture become the universal symbol of blessing? Why can it be found not only in Orthodox tradition but also in Catholicism? The answer may lie in deep layers of symbolism that extend far beyond Christianity. Art historians and esoteric researchers point out that this hand position appears in ancient Greek mysteries, where such gestures were used to signify an initiated status. Neoplatonic texts describe ritual poses that call forth the presence of the logos, almost echoing the gospel phrase, "and the word became flesh." A little-known fact, in the early Christian catacombs of Rome, among images of Christ, there are engravings where the blessing gesture is made with the left hand. This breaks all church canons. Why? Some researchers argue that this points to the dualism present in early Christianity under the influence of Gnostic movements. The left hand symbolizes the hidden side of divinity, shadow, mystery, and knowledge for the chosen. Moreover, a similar gesture appears in Masonic symbolism of the 18th century. In the initiation ritual of an apprentice at one of the degrees, the mentor demonstrates the same sign as a symbol of silent knowledge, the transmission of a secret from teacher to student. Could this be a mere coincidence? Or does Christian iconography consciously use ancient codes woven into new meanings? It is also important to mention the connection with Kabbalah. Some finger positions correspond to letters of the ancient Hebrew alphabet, which means they could be symbols of God's names. Particularly interesting is the cross gesture, where the fingers form the symbol Shin, one of the letters with which the name Shaddai, one of God's names in Judaism, begins. Thus, the gesture of Christ is not just a blessing. It is a powerful visual symbol, behind which lie layers of meaning, from simple theological to deeply esoteric. In the next part, we will explore how body poses, gaze, and even head tilt in icons may indicate affiliation with secret schools and knowledge forbidden to the general public. When we look at an icon, we see a stationary image, but at first glance, it seems static. Iconography has, over the centuries, perfected its art of transmitting the invisible through postures, head tilts, the direction of gaze, and even the position of the feet. Every detail works like a phrase in a secret language, where there are no coincidences. Let's start with the head. On some Byzantine and Russian icons, Jesus tilts his head to the right. Traditionally, this is interpreted as a sign of mercy. But if we compare numerous icons, especially those painted in different geographical and historical contexts, we can notice an interesting pattern. The head tilt corresponds to certain letters of the Greek alphabet, from which an acrostic can be formed. Such visual ciphers, according to researchers of sacred geometry, were known to the masters of the monasteries on Mount Athos, where icon painting was considered not just a craft, but a spiritual practice akin to alchemy. Now the eyes. In some icons, Christ looks directly at the viewer, in others, slightly to the side. A direct gaze symbolizes active presence, omniscience. But in many rare icons, for example, in the Georgian school of the 12th century, the pupils are shifted towards the center, creating a sense of inner vision. Esotericists interpret this as a symbol of a meditative state, a trance accessible only to those who have undergone the path of inner purification. This is no longer the image of the teacher addressing the flock. It's a mirror in which the seeker should reflect. Body poses are another key. In early Byzantine iconography, there are depictions of Jesus where the right leg is positioned backward and the left slightly forward. This is unnatural from a physiological standpoint, but if we consider the position of the feet from the perspective of Hermetic symbols, it could indicate entering another world, a step behind the veil. In alchemical texts, such as the Mudras Liber, a similar posture symbolizes the transition between levels of existence. Why, then, is Jesus depicted this way? Perhaps it's a visual hint at his dual nature, existing simultaneously in two worlds. Let's not forget the hands. In some icons, Christ holds a scroll close to his heart, not an open book, but a scroll. This is important. According to Gnostic beliefs, the scroll is a symbol of secret knowledge, available only to the initiated. An open book is for all, but the scroll is for the chosen. Moreover, in some cases, the scroll doesn't even touch the chest directly, but seems to hover before it, as if hinting at an invisible reality between the body and the text. Thus, the icon speaks not only through colors, but also through gestures, poses, gazes. It's a whole language of symbols, encoded for those who know how to see. In the next part, we will focus on the surroundings of Christ, halos, backgrounds, inscriptions, architectural elements, and even plants in the background, and attempt to decode even deeper layers of sacred messages. If the face and posture of Christ in an icon are the direct speech, then everything that surrounds him is a whisper between the lines. Halos, architectural backgrounds, inscriptions, even the twigs and stones in the background, these are not mere artistic props, but carefully crafted elements that could carry hidden meanings, accessible only to the initiated. Let's begin with the halo. A simple circle behind the head, symbolizing holiness? That's only on the surface. In many ancient icons, especially in Eastern schools, Christ's halo contains a cross inscribed with the Greek letters nu, the being. This is a well-known symbol, but in some cases, the letters are slightly deformed or arranged asymmetrically. According to some researchers, this could be an ancient system of encoding. Considering that in Christian tradition, numbers and letters are interconnected, gematria, deviations might indicate specific numerical messages. For instance, one icon from the 16th century in Pskov contains a halo where the position of the letters corresponds to the number 318, the number of the fathers of the First Council of Nicaea. Is this a coincidence? The backgrounds also play a non-obvious role. In earlier icons, the background was often golden, a symbol of divine light, outside of time. But starting in the 14th century, there was a trend for architectural landscapes, columns, arches, palaces. At first glance, they seem like just decorative elements. However, architectural details often resemble buildings that didn't exist in Byzantium or the Holy Land. Some of them match the plans of temples known in Hellenistic Egypt. For example, there's an icon of Christ in glory, where, behind the throne, the outline of a ziggurat, a Babylonian tower, can be seen. Is this a hint at Christ's connection to ancient knowledge? Or a warning? Natural details form another category. In Western iconography, they became especially popular during the Renaissance, but Eastern masters also left symbolic codes. The lily flower, a symbol of purity? Yes, but if a poppy is depicted next to it, it could symbolize death and awakening, a symbol of transition. In some rare icons, for example, in the Georgian school, there's an image of a vine wrapping around the cross. This is understandable. I am the true vine, says Christ, John 15 verse 1. But if you look closely, the vines are intertwined in the shape of a spiral, an ancient Gnostic symbol of eternal return. Inscriptions also deserve attention. The inscription ICXC Jesus Christ may seem simple, but in some icons, for instance, from Mount Athos, the letters are finely engraved in the halo rather than written. This could be related to the esoteric teachings of hesychasm, where the name of God should not be spoken aloud but experienced in silent prayer. Even the style of the font can be a clue. Cyrillic inscriptions with unusual flourishes often correspond to the forms of letters in early Kabbalistic texts. Thus, the background is not just an artistic backdrop. It is the second speech of the icon, its quiet message, requiring a discerning viewer, an attentive reader. Those who are able to hear the invisible will understand that the icon does not only depict, but also encodes. Bringing together all the observations, gestures, symbolism, colors, architectural hints, secret inscriptions, we come to the most important question. Could icons have been not just sacred art, but a means of hiding and transmitting information? A source of ancient knowledge disguised as religious canon? History knows many examples of how visual images have been used to encode information. Ancient Egyptian priests, Freemasons, alchemists, and even medieval architects all left messages in the form of symbols, proportions, and geometric shapes. Christian iconography, especially in the Byzantine and post-Byzantine traditions, could well have been part of this continuous line of esoteric transmission. Some researchers believe that particularly during periods of persecution and change, such as the iconoclasm of the 8th to 9th centuries, masters might have encrypted their knowledge to protect it from destruction. The icon would transform into a visual scroll, at first glance depicting Christ, the Virgin, saints. But upon closer inspection, geometric patterns, Kabbalistic numbers, signs reminiscent of Gnostic symbols. For example, the number 153, encoded in the number of fish in the fresco The Miracle of the Catch of Fish. According to Pythagoras, this is a triangular number associated with divine order. The role of monastic orders here is especially important. The hesychasts on Mount Athos in the 14th century were not just contemplatives, but also subtle philosophers. Among them were those who engaged in numerical interpretations of Scripture, contemplation of light as a form of communion with God, and perhaps knew more than they let on. Their icons are often filled with special symbolism, distorted perspectives, glowing geometries, strange figures in the background. But how did the Church allow this? Perhaps all of this took place under the guise of secret brotherhoods, or was permitted as invisible to the uninitiated. There are accounts that within the higher clergy, certain knowledge was transmitted orally, and images served as a sort of notebook for those who knew how to read. Modern technologies now allow us to do what past artists could not: digital analysis of paints, perspectives, and X-ray scanning of layers. Thanks to this, images hidden beneath the top layers of paint have been uncovered, secondary scenes, additional signs, even entirely different narratives. This proves that an icon may not be what it seems. And today, when an icon becomes an object of museum or everyday perception, at this very moment, it reveals its second essence, as an encrypted message, as a gateway into a hidden layer of history intertwined with power, faith, and secret knowledge.